Welcome to the Time to Practice podcast. This is a space where we talk about music practice, the ups and downs that young musicians go through related to practice and learning music, and how we as parents, caregivers, and music educators can support the young musicians in our lives, support ourselves, and support each other. My name is Christine Goodner. I'm a music educator, author, and podcaster who has made it my mission to talk about music practice and to support educators and families looking to make home practice more effective and to reduce conflict and frustration in the practice room. I'm glad you're here. You're listening to episode 113, and before we dive into our topic today, all about thinking about music practice as quality time, I just wanted to give a brief PSA that if you'll be at the Suzuki or ASTA convention next month in San Francisco, I want to personally invite you to two talks that I'm giving. I will be giving a talk on Thursday and Friday mornings at 10 a.m. each day, one with Catherine Drake from Ithaca and one solo talk. Drake and I will be presenting a session called How to Talk So Parents Will Listen and Listen So Parents Will Talk, all about the future of parent education, as it's called in the Suzuki method, or supporting families that we work with. I'm very excited about that talk. And then I will also be presenting myself on the topic titled Developing a Focus in a Distracted World, all about the developmental process of learning to focus and some of the things that get in our way in our current culture and how we can support our students and even ourselves with some of the research that I'm going to share. So I invite you to come to one or both of those talks. I'm sure I will find ways to share that content in other ways after the conference, but I'm really excited to share it there. And I would love to schedule a time to practice meetup sometime at the conference. So if you're going and we'll be there, please reach out and we'll find a time to all get together for coffee or something like that. And hope we get to chat in person. All right, let's dive in. How can we be more consistent getting in our music practice? Whether it's our own practice as a musician or practice with our child or a child that we support during practice over the course of a week. There are a lot of practical strategies that I talk about, that many other people in the music world talk about, and there's a lot of resources for that, like having a practice routine or having a scheduled time to practice each day. That could mean the same time every single day, or sitting down on the weekend, looking at the week ahead and planning out when you will practice each day that week based on your particular schedule at any given time. That is definitely how I get my own practice in. Building that practice routine is my number one tip for families looking for ways to support their child's music at home. Another strategy could be to look for things that are getting in the way of getting practice done if you do have a routine, but maybe it's hard to follow it. Maybe a few short practices would work over the course of a day better than one long chunk of time. Maybe timing practice after a snack or a break from school for your child will help them with their motivation or ability to focus. Beyond practical matters and ideas, though, I wanted to talk today about reframing practice and thinking about practice as a form of quality time. Many parents that I have worked with in my own studio and at workshops I've given have told me they enjoyed and appreciated practice with their child so much more and felt more motivated to do it themselves when they started to think about their involvement in their child's music practice as a form of quality time. There are multiple children in your family, it could be the longest chunk of one on one focused time that you spend with your child on a daily, consistent basis. Thinking about music practice support as relationship building with the instrument involved and a special time to spend together can change the dynamic and help us appreciate the time that we have around music practice together. When I interviewed Suzuki violin teacher trainer, pioneer of the Suzuki method in the United States, Alice Joy Lewis, a few years back for my book, Beyond the Music Lesson, one of the things she said to me that made it into the book and stuck with me the most was, the greatest gift you can give your child is your presence. So, in today's episode, I'm going to cover a little bit more about the idea of quality time with our child and being present with our child in practice from my book, Beyond the Music Lesson. We're going to talk about the idea of practice as quality time with our instrument or with the music that we love. And then I'm going to share a few little anecdotes or case studies from parents who gave me permission to share how they think about music practice with their child as quality time that might be good food for thought or good inspiration or a good reminder of what's already happening, but might be helpful to think about and remind ourselves that this part of being with our child or being with our music and instrument can be one of the wonderful things about music besides just the playing of the music itself. So I thought today, as we're talking about this topic, that I would share a little bit of my story. I'm going to read to you a little bit from my book, Beyond the Music Lesson. If you have a paperback copy, this is on page 39, part of chapter 4 about being present. And I think it's fun to weave this into our topic of the day. So this is from a subheading called My Story. My dad was a primary practice partner growing up. I remember him sitting patiently and offering helpful suggestions when I needed it, or simply being a steady presence in my practice sessions when I was dealing with frustration over learning something new. By paying close attention to what would work best when helping me, he learned what made me willing to stick it out through frustrating moments and how to best encourage me, even when my attitude could have used some improvement. I especially remember as a teenager that my dad understood me like no one else, and I have no doubt that came from all those hours of practicing together. He gave me his undivided attention every single day we practiced together. Actually, I was very lucky that both of my parents parented this way in many parts of my life. As a young child, I remember asking my dad to come in the living room after he got home from work one day to watch some choreographed marching I had come up with while listening to my Suzuki recording. I am sure it was nothing interesting to watch, but I can still remember him saying, "What a great way to learn your music," and acting very interested. I'm sure he was tired, and spending time practicing with me was not the first thing on his list of relaxing activities for the evening, but he never let on that it was anything but great to spend time together practicing. His interest and presence when it was time to practice formed a strong bond between us. Try as I might to recall the actual practicing we did together, what I remember most is how it felt to work with my dad, to feel like he was really focused on what I was doing and how much it meant to me to have him just be there while I practiced. I think being truly present was a huge gift that both of my parents gave to me. And I will give a quick shout out that my dad sometimes listens to the podcast. So, parents don't often get a big thank you for the work they do practicing in the practice room with their children or showing up to be present. So, uh, I do want to just express my gratitude for all that time he and really both my parents put into my musical journey. So, even if your child doesn't specifically articulate the same message to you, my message, if you're a family member, parent, caregiver who is practicing with your child, to remember that it matters, that being present and being a presence that shows up interested in the child that you are working with goes a really long way and will most likely stick with your child for life, even if they don't say the thank you out loud to you. Know what you do is really important. And if you think about that, I'm going to be present and show up and just be interested in my child related to this instrument is a beautiful gift you can give your child. And it will sort of weave in warm, nurturing moments into the musical experience that your child has when they think back on their music journey. And it really goes a long way in developing a lifelong love of music that I know many of you are hoping and working to develop in your children. So we'll come back to this idea of quality time between parent or caregiver and child at the end of this episode with some other people's stories. But I wanted to talk about another aspect of quality time we could think about. As musicians, whatever our age, we can also think about our music practice as quality time with our instruments. I loved the conversation we had on the podcast last season on episode 48 specifically with Amy Beth Horman, who shared about a journey she went on to never put her violin on her shoulder to play without having a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to make music and play it. And Amy Beth came on the podcast for 2 episodes that season. I will put a link to both of them in the show notes if you haven't heard them yet or it's been a while. They're both very inspiring and thought provoking. And I'm going to share with you today a short clip that ties into what we're talking about and gives some food for thought about how we might reframe the way we think about playing our instruments.
I had a discussion with a group of students not that long ago that was very interesting. And I actually didn't write this down to talk to you about this, but it's coming to me right now. I was in a workshop with them and I said, let me ask you a question. It has to do with mindset. When you go to your lesson to meet with your teacher, how do you feel walking in? What kind of energy do you walk in with? and they said good energy, positive, optimistic, ready to work, eager to receive kind of energy. And I said, how do you walk in for yourself, for your practice? What kind of energy do you bring into the practice room to work with yourself, with your body, with your ears, with your spirit? Do you walk in with the same energy you just described, or is it quite different? And every one of them said it was quite different. Oh, except for one. There was one who was very young. She said it's the same. And then I said to that young one, I said, I hope you keep that forever, because I think that is the key to happiness in practice, to be holding space for ourselves and our spirits and our energy, our positivity, the same way we do for another person that we respect very much, who we know that they can help us. So when I used to go to my teacher, I felt so positive before I went to him that he was going to help me with anything that I needed. So that in and of itself on the car ride over was very invigorating. It was an incredibly encouraging feeling, because whatever I had at home that was bothering me in my practice, on the car ride over, I was pretty sure that he was going to be able to help me with those things. And I had been living with those little gremlins all week by myself. So I was excited to see him, take those and debunk them and make them into friendlier parts of my practice. And so there's that optimism, that faith, that trust. I know I will feel different on the car back. And I did. Every time I felt different on the way back. Sometimes he made me feel so much better within 3 minutes of standing there with him that it could almost be like the lesson was already over and I would be completely satisfied. But I think that we hold the power to do that for ourselves more than we believe. I think that we can walk into a practice room on our own and actually give ourselves a lot of the same nurturing and a lot of the same encouragement. And if our mind is in the right place, I think that we can puzzle through things that might have eluded us or troubled us inside the week. So I think it's so much about mindset, and especially with the preteens and teens. I believe that is also true. And the other thing I wanted to talk about with practice, I probably should have answered this before, Christine, when you asked me about practice, because there was another stage of practice for me, and that was when I was an adult. And practice as an adult became very different because I ended up having beautiful kids and becoming a mother. And I was blessed with little ones in the house running around, and also a full studio of students. But at the time when my children were babies and toddlers, I was playing big concerti with orchestra still. And so those times were very special to me because they looked impossible. It looked like, how will I prepare the Brahms or the Nielsen or the Beethoven? And sometimes I would have multiple concerti within a month. How am I going to do this and also teach and be a good mom and a good wife? That was a puzzle in my head. And one thing that occurred to me in my own practice, because I was feeling so scheduled and like I needed to get things done, I think I was in my 30s when this happened. I must have been. But I remember very distinctly having a practice session which felt to me to be very stressed and too regimented and too much like a task list. And I stopped and I thought, this isn't how I want to relate to my instrument. It's almost like the instrument is a person to me. And I felt like it was so disrespectful to this instrument that's given me so much over the years and has lent me such happiness and feelings of satisfaction and empowerment. And I thought, here I am turning it into almost a chore. And it's a privilege to play these concerts. So if I'm going to play the concerts, I need to respect this energy that I have with the instrument. So I made a little rule for myself, which was that when I touched the violin, or I said to my students, when it reaches my shoulder, when that tap happens, I try and shift into a place of gratitude where I remember that it is a blessing for me to make this beautiful music. And if I lose track of that feeling, I put the violin down, no matter how much I've been practicing so far. And I started doing that, and I'm very good at making these little rules for myself and sticking with them because I'm curious about what will come. And so I did this for a week or two, and I recognized within that time frame that it would completely change my relationship to practice again. And that shift was, I think, the only reason I was able to perform as long as I have. And it kept me uh, just in love with the instrument and with sound and vibration for so much longer. And sometimes I look back on that and I think, if I can impart that to students, that it's so much of this is on them, to maintain that beauty, that relationship of wonder and curiosity and gratitude with the instrument, that is actually something that they have to participate in and be responsible for, and how special it is. That is something that I talk to the students about. And as the music gets harder, that is very difficult to maintain, and that I understand that, but that I believe in it because I did it. And that process to me was very dear to my heart. It definitely helped my whole house. It helped everybody in the house. And I like to think that it helped the audiences that heard me inside that year, because it was an incredible shift for me.
That conversation really got me thinking about how I feel when I go to start my own practice, and I encourage you to go back and listen to that full interview if you haven't had the opportunity to hear it yet. As musicians, whatever our age, we can also think about music as quality time with a particular piece of music that we love to play. Finding joy or satisfaction or a sense of accomplishment by playing something we love to play or love to hear can be very motivating. And maybe our child has assignments from their teacher to accomplish, and they could cap off their practice time once those things are done with whatever piece they love to play. Or maybe it's hard to get ourselves or our child into the practice room to get started, and we could be drawn to the instrument by playing that one thing we can't wait to interact with on our instrument, and that could get us warmed up and ready to practice other things once we get going. Whether it's quality time with our child in the practice room, if we are involved, quality time with our instrument, or quality time with a piece of music we love, I think reframing practice, or at least part of our music making, and really acknowledging what it gives to us can be a great way to stay motivated and stay consistent as we head into the new year. This past weekend, before heading into my recording studio here at home, I asked in the Suzuki Triangle community online if anyone had any stories about approaching music practice with their child as quality time. So before we go today, I'm going to share a few that have come in so far. I hope to keep collecting them and to share a few more in the future. The first submission was by Nia, who says, "My daughter, who's 3, began Suzuki violin lessons a few months after her little sister was born. Daily practice has been an important time for us to carve out of the day when I can focus solely on quality time with her, aside from the time we spend with the baby. We get to play, sing, and be silly together. We both love when I get to play one of my instruments as well, and we can play little twinkle duets. I look forward to this bonding time with her every day and can't wait to see how her love of music grows." Sharon writes, "As a violin teacher and my child's practice partner, I strive to have the practice time feel like quality time. I think one thing that helps me more than anything is entering into my daughter's flow, her sense of time, rather than my own mindset of having to get things done. If I go at her pace, allow for some detours and silliness, and simply slow down, written in all caps, things go much better. Even given all of that, there are some weeks where we are really working well together and both enjoying that time, and weeks that still feel a bit more adversarial." And that's what I'm saying that in a cheerful voice because there was sort of a laughing emoji after that comment. And I really can relate to that. I think this encapsulates, doesn't mean our quality time is perfect in every way or there aren't frustrating moments, just that we are experiencing the time with our child and focusing on that together. I'll share one more person's experience about practice as quality time today, but I already have a couple others in mind that are worth sharing in the future. And if you would like to share your experience with thinking about practice in this way, especially if you didn't think of it this way at the start and then something changed your mind or helped you think about this perspective and why it has helped you, I would love to include your experience in a future episode. Please reach out, Christine at SuzukiTriangle.com. Send me an email, or you can send me a message on Instagram at Suzuki Triangle. So I'm going to close out today with our last comment from Wei, who says, I'll add that practice time is when the kids sometimes encounter challenges and frustrations. I like that I can participate in these moments to provide guidance and hopefully help build their confidence and resilience. Also, this is partly a procrastination tool, but one on one practice time is when the kids share a lot about their lives. So I love that. Being there with our kids while they experience the ups and the downs of their music practice, just getting to be included in their lives and have them share things with us can be a wonderful byproduct of having this quality time in our interactions around what could be many things in life. But for the conversation we're having today about music practice, have a very good week, everyone, and take good care.